Hi, I'm Lee Terry, and I have the distinction to interview Cara Eastman today. And of course, the reason why I get to is because I was in Congress for a while. But we've known each other a little bit. I actually went down to your facility. And so tell me about you, how long you've been in Omaha. We know about HOAK. But I want to hear a little bit about why you developed HOAK.
Well, I'm Cara Eastman, running for Congress, and I moved to Omaha about 12 years ago because my husband took a position at Creighton in the history department, and he's the director of Latin American studies there. And at that time, our daughter was about 5, and Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance was just getting started. My background is in social work and nonprofit work, especially building nonprofits. And so they hired me to start the organization. At that time, the group grew out, with your help actually, of the lead Superfund site. And Omaha is still the largest residential Superfund site in the nation as a result of lead contamination. And that group came about with community support as well as support from all the Nebraska delegations. So you actually had a representative on our board when we started. And over time, we developed into not just focusing on lead, but all environmental hazards in the home. So including lead, but also mold, radon, anything inside the home that was impacting children's health.
And it did make a good impact. It was necessary for the congressional delegation, as you mentioned, my work in that area, but the EPA was just dragging their feet, and they were way behind on what they were needing to do in the city of Omaha. But we got the town organized, and we really forced them to come to the table, and they have. But it's been a long project, still going on.
That's right, actually, and you were a champion for that effort because the EPA did need to do things better and involve the community more, and so I'm really grateful for the work that we did together.
That's what it's all about in Nebraska and Omaha especially. There's a lot of needs here, and they only get done when we all work together.
That's right.
So where did you live before you came here?
So I'm from the Midwest. I'm originally from Chicago. I've moved around a little bit. I met my husband in California, and then I've lived in Wisconsin, I've lived in Massachusetts, and before moving to Omaha, we lived in Orange County, California, because my husband was getting his PhD at UC Irvine, and I was growing a national volunteer program for people with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease.
Oh. Well, one of the other things I did when I was in Congress is I was the head for the House of the ALS registry, to determine whether there was environmental impacts because they were in clusters. Mm-hmm. So you've probably had to work with or get to know the ALS community.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's one of the most devastating diseases,
yes,
and still considered an orphan disease because the federal government and pharmaceutical companies haven't invested enough because we don't have a large enough population of people with the disease, and it's a travesty.
How's everybody doing? Hi, I'm Brad Ashford, and this is a unique opportunity for me, certainly, to get to ask some questions of my good friend, Congressman Don Bacon. It's the way things ought to be, is having good conversation on issues of our day, of our time. So I know it's the birthday of the Air Force today. So, and I was reminded when you reminded me of that, and you've got your Air Force time.
I had to celebrate today.
Right, and so I was reminded of my dad, who flew a B-26 bomber, and we did in Europe, and we discovered his flight jacket with the 64 missions on the jacket.
Impressive.
So it's a birthday we hold dear in our family.
People
too.
don't realize how many folks were killed in the 8th Air Force flying over Germany. I mean, it was.
Well, the B-26 was flew too low, didn't it? I mean, it was very low, not that fast.
More of an intermediate bomber
Right.
versus the B-17.
Right. It was higher up.
But the Germans had very hard air defenses, so to fly that many missions.
Yeah, we were proud of them. But let me, you represent us, and you're running to represent us again. Just give me a brief background of how you got to a place where you wanted to run for office and whatever background you want to give us, and we'll get started on some questions.
Well, start with my mom and dad were volunteers for Goldwater. So I was raised in this family that talked a lot of politics. And I became a Ronald Reagan campaign kid at 13 in 1976 when he lost to Ford. Remember crying the day he lost to Ford.
Didn't have anything to do with
So I
Ford.
was very involved. But I was,
No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
but it was really, just, I was raised in a home that talked about it. I knew all 100 senators, where they came from, all 9 Supreme Court justices. I read Human Events, National Review, U.S. News and World Report in junior high and high school. So I was just born with, with an innate interest. When I graduated high school at 16. When I went to college, became the opinion page editor.
Now, where'd you go to? You went to Northern Illinois?
For my last 2 years. My first 2 years, I went to Northwestern in Orange City, Iowa.
Okay.
And there I did some opinion page work. There wrote editorials. Ended up interning for a congressman called, his name was Ed Madigan, when I was 20 years old.
He was there a long time.
And so was my start. So I've always had an interest. And when I retired from the Air Force, I knew I wanted to get involved, but I didn't know where. And just so I got involved with Lee Terry's campaign. I didn't know you. I met you once at a MOA dinner, believe it or not. You may not remember, but I remember meeting you. And
Oh, made an impression.
but so I ended up getting involved with Lee Terry, but I had no intention of running for Congress. I just wanted to get involved, but I had a desire to get involved somewhere, just wherever I thought I could fit in.
So, how did you get into the Air Force? Were you in ROTC? How did you move from college to the Air Force?
Well, I was a 90-day wonder, we call it. I went to officer training school, and I always liked military history, but at the time, you could probably relate to this, long hair was in, and so the Air Force haircuts didn't impress me.
I take that personally, Don.
Well, I had long hair.
That's news. Everybody note that.
It was down on my shoulders when I got married. I don't like looking at those pictures.
Oh boy, let's keep it quiet.
We'll hide it. I didn't even care for the black plastic core frame shoes either. But when I graduated at 20 out of college, I met a consular that was a retired Air Force guy, but I loved reading military history. He says, "Don, you ought to join the Air Force. You got an interest in it." And I just sort of thought about it. I go, he's right. And so I went and signed up the next day.
Let's move. That's interesting. I mean, and you had a career. How many years did you serve?
29 years and 8 months. But I knew it was time to get out when it was time to do. The Pentagon's not a fun place to be.
Oh, you were in the Pentagon, weren't
Right.
you? Yeah. So I've been given a series of issues to ask you about. So why don't we just dive right in?